An example of language processing. What is the example of language processing? Let's find out. Now, in order to understand the language processes, you really need to look at number of other structural processes that are involved. For example, understanding of language incrementally, word by word. What do we mean by that? That refers to how do people construct interpretation. When we are understanding language word by word, incrementally, we keep on adding information to the existing knowledge that we have, and based on that, people construct interpretation. Their interpretation comes from their understanding of the information, their understanding of the language that is being produced, and that also comes from their previous experiences, how they are used by language in the form of a sentence or maybe in the form of any text. Must resolve local and global ambiguity. That is, how do people decide upon a particular interpretation? So, in terms of developing a consensus or in terms of coming up with a solid resolution that this is the right interpretation, they need to overcome any ambiguity which they find in that discourse. Decisions are sometimes wrong. Now, that is what information is used to identify we made a mistake. This is very important. How can you determine that you have made a mistake? Your conviction that this is a mistake and you need to correct it, or you have to make an alternative decision. What are the parameters that enable you to resolve or to come up with this understanding that this particular decision is incorrect? How do we search for an alternative? So what are the parameters that enable you not only in determination of or in determining of a particular decision that is incorrect or wrong, but what can be done to provide correction or to correct that decision? That are also an important area of language processing. So just to give you example in the light of all those points that we have discussed, now look at the example which is basically a garden path sentence. What is a garden path sentence? A garden path sentence is a sentence that is temporarily ambiguous or confusing. Now it contains a group of words or word group which appears to be compatible with more than one structural analysis. Now, garden path sentence is often or is primarily a grammatically correct sentence, but it leads readers to unlikely interpretation, which yields unintended meaning. Looking at the example proposed by Clark and Clark, I was afraid of Ali's powerful punch. Now, if you look at this part of the sentence, you develop a certain type of interpretation that maybe it can be an alcoholic beverage or a boxing punch. Especially, and when you read the complete sentence, you move on and say, especially since it had already laid out many tougher men who had bragged they could handle that much alcohol. Now, the start of the sentence creates a different type of interpretation, maybe a confusing or ambiguous. And when you complete the sentence, you come up with a different understanding of the sentence, which it did not intend to communicate when you read the very first part. So the word here is punch, which can mean either an alcoholic beverage or a boxing punch. So the subjective impression for most people at the end of the sentence is having assumed the wrong meaning and then backtracking. So when you reach at the end, You have assumed a wrong meaning and then you do the backtracking and try to figure out what the intended meaning of the sentence is. One meaning at a time, with top-down processing playing only a limited role. Decision is based on the immediate context, not the entire context or entire sentence. However, the retrieval of multiple meanings is a fixed property of a lexicon, that it is automatic, modular, and not related at all to sentence context, which is basically bottom-up. Two stages of processing may exist: an automatic stage, in which all meanings are retrieved, and a more controlled stage that is more top-down in nature. To conclude, overall, the complexity of language and the sheer amount of information processing that is taking place in just a few seconds, it is sometimes a wonder that we have any conscious awareness of these processes at all.